My name is Miriam Shakow, and I'm a cultural anthropologist, so I study the lives and perspectives of people who are alive now, and their memories of the recent past. And I'm an associate professor of anthropology at TCNJ, College of New Jersey, and I'm in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. And my research, one of the reasons why I became interested in climate change, I've always had an interest actually in organic agriculture, so I studied organic farming and gardening before I went back to school to study anthropology. So I went to the UC Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems in the year 2000 and learned techniques. We lived on the farm for 6 months in tents and with 40 other people, and did hands-on learning of organic farming techniques. So I always had that interest, but and that would kind of, I should say, orient me towards thinking about issues like climate change and other environmental issues. But really, my research in Bolivia, which started when I did study abroad as an undergraduate, anthropology, sociology and anthropology major. I was at Swarthmore College in the mid-90s, and I was interested in Latin America, and I kind of, knew I wanted to study abroad in Latin America. I went to Bolivia because the program looked good. It was on sustainable development, and it just so happened that it was based in this area in central Bolivia that had been undergoing a terrible drought for really like the core of it, or I should say like the extremity of it began in the 1980s with an El Nino event, I think in 1981, 1982, and they'd just been suffering from this drought ever since. And I remember wondering why, and that was, honestly, it was the mid-90s, so climate change wasn't, I don't think it was really on my radar at that point. And I remember asking environmental scientists in the area, and they explained that it's a environmentally fragile area. So just because of where it is, like between the Andes and the Amazon, it just so happens that it's in a kind of vulnerable location. And there had been a lot of deforestation in the area to build railroads and also for local industries. So, there were local reasons, but it's one of those kind of canaries in the coal mine. And so I started doing undergraduate research there in the 90s, and then I returned there to do my doctoral work, and I just returned in 2009. Returned in 2009, and I just returned this past January. And it's just, the drought's just gotten worse and worse. And last year, this whole region, with a major city of over 1 million people, had hardly any water all of last year. So it became this major issue. And in that area, I never heard people talking about climate change when I was last there in 2009. And everybody was talking about climate change when I was there in January. So it had just been it's just one of those places where you can see it happen. So it's kind of been a bellwether for me, where you can see it more directly than from some places in the Mid-Atlantic.
All right. Well, thank you very much for sharing your background with that. It's very impressive. Okay. Just want to make sure.
Sure.
So, first question that I want to ask, and what are the environmental challenges and opportunities facing New Jersey's next governor?
Right. So, from my perspective, I'm not an environmental scientist, so I have hung out with some, and honestly, I come to the specific issue of climate change recently. So I can speak from, I feel like I have my ideas as a citizen, as a pretty well-educated citizen in terms on climate change issues, and I can also speak as an educator, probably with more authority. As someone who's been teaching about climate change for the last few years and reading widely, reading what anthropologists have written from, based on research all over the world, as well as reading what climate scientists have been looking at globally and also specifically in the region. We know that there are going to be more frequent rain events, possibly with droughts in between, heavier rains. It's going to be hotter, and I think especially the state both depends on agriculture and has a lot of urban areas. So it's just if you're in an urban area and it gets hotter and the rain, it's just miserable. health-wise and just, in terms of your experience. And then if you're a farmer, it becomes, I'm attuned to farming issues because of my background. So that really worries me. And I actually have a student right now, Daniel Marr, who's doing his undergraduate thesis on how New Jersey farmers are experiencing climate change. And he's comparing how conventional farmers and organic farmers are thinking about and understanding the shifts that they're seeing. They're all seeing shifts, but it's a question of, to what did they attribute it? What's their kind of confidence level about their ability to cope? But, it just makes things really unpredictable. So I just think you have a state where, like we're dependent on farming and, obviously we're dependent on a lot of other things, but, it's like a lot of farms in New Jersey and a lot of low-income people living in cities. So it's really, we need to deal with it. So again, as a well-educated citizen, I would say we need to join the regional consortium, whose name I'm forgetting, but, the Greenhouse Gas Initiative, like we should, what's that?
Reggie,
yeah. So, we need to rejoin that, obviously, that's something that's very obvious. As like, when you teach young people, either in the K-12 or in college, you're both thinking about how to teach the next generation, but you're also really critically aware of the challenges that, the younger generation is facing. And so I would say, in terms of the challenges they're facing, it's no surprise to anyone, young people are having such a hard time getting jobs. Their level of concern about finding a career path that will lead them to a job, a job that they can, have an adult life and have a family and, have their own household and all that kind of stuff. They're so much more concerned about it now than I was when I was in college, because the job market just wasn't nearly as tight. So for me, when I think about climate change, it really is, I guess I really do agree with Naomi Klein in her book, This Changes Everything, where she said, like, this is really an incredible opportunity. Right now, if you don't even think about the major problem of climate change, we have a major economic catastrophe, which is just, here. It's already here, but it's really confronting the younger generation much more forcefully, which is that we have automation, we have more labor than the economy needs, and the economy is just getting more and more efficient in terms of labor, which means that it's getting inefficient in terms of jobs. So I see that, my students are panicked, and, I'm sure you're, so I see that all the time, and I've seen it the first semester that I taught as a faculty member after I graduated from my doctoral program. It was the fall of 2008, so the very first semester that I started teaching, the financial crisis exploded. It was like that first week of classes, and I saw students just start to panic, and, it was like, it really has been, I feel not, that kind of level of concern and anxiety that they feel has been there, since I started teaching. And I feel like we can, just for those reasons would be reason enough that we have to retool our economy and make it divide up the labor that there is among the people that there are, and really, make some structural changes in how we, how people get paid, what kind of salaries. Like, people basically need to get a living, a salary they can live on, and maybe it means that they'll each do less work, like a 25-hour work week or 30-hour work week. And the reason I mention that in regard to climate change is we also need to retool our economy in order to, to make it be based on renewable energy instead of, fossil fuels. So the fact that young people are confronting significant joblessness, and that we need to retool our economy, and that green jobs really do provide more employment than fossil fuel-based jobs. It's all, there's a synergy there. Those are all overlapping needs. So when I think about the needs of, like, people to have employment, as well as people are getting trained now, and they can get trained in those new jobs. They're not 50 or 60 years old. Like, they're able to learn those skills, to the maximum degree. That's where the government needs to go. The government needs to make it a huge priority, not just make jobs a huge priority, but see the opportunity in the need for a new economy to provide jobs for everybody, to provide good jobs for everyone, and the need for a significantly retooled economy to avoid catastrophic climate change.